All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. This is the show that allows young people to speak about matters, politics, and everything in between there. We're speaking about the 10-point agenda, the youth verdict. My guests are with me, starting from the top, Kipkorir Serem, the youth leader. Mundalo Advice is a leadership and communication specialist. And Marvin Sese is a founder.com initiative. On the lower deck, we have Valerie Sitawa, students president, University of Nairobi. We have Dave Owango, who's a youth leader, and El Nino Esther, who's a youth leader as well. Thank you all for making time. And Serem, let's start with you again on this conversation. On the 10-point agenda, what is your verdict? Has it been implemented or not? And let's start with the rating. From a scale of 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, what did you rate it and why?
Thank you. Thank you. My rating of the 10-point agenda is, I'll rate it at 8. 8? Yes, okay. That's probably 80%. And fast forward, before maybe I explain why, I give my much appreciation to His Excellency President and the late Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga for sitting down then and coming up with this 10-point agenda. So on this 10-point agenda, there are those areas that have been achieved, and they are very well much visible when you talk about this point of inclusivity in all spheres. The terms of reference in the 10-point agenda committee was on health, infrastructure, economy, and education. When you talk about infrastructure, Trevor, we come from a country whereby initially there was very much marginalization in terms of infrastructure, but today in 2026, the reverse is the reality, because when this administration took over in 2022, Kenya had constructed 21,000 roads. That's in 2022. And now in 2026, we see 6,000 kilometers of roads being constructed. And that is very much well visible when you talk about the famous Marsabit, Isiolo, and Wajir 750-kilometer stretch. When you talk about the Rironi Mau Summit dual carriage, when you talk about the Makutano, Kenol, Karatina, Marua dual carriage, it's taking shape. So that has been achieved, and there are more much taking place in the country. That is on infrastructure. When you talk about the education, we've seen employment of 100,000 teachers. 100,000 teachers, Trevor, I'll tell you as an education expert, that in 2022, Kenya had a deficit of 168,000 teachers. And employment of 100,000 teachers, that in education sector reduces, or rather brings the ratio of teacher to student down from 1 to 48 down to 1 to 29. And with the run-up to 2027 elections, I've seen they are proposing to employ another 40,000 teachers. That will bring the ratio of teacher to student to 1 to 25. An education expert will tell you that is recommended by UNESCO. So that is a score in the education sector. Again, still in the education sector, when we are talking about inclusivity in all spheres, you will see that in TVETs, the enrollment has risen in 2022 from 297,000 to 738,000 in 2026. That is inclusivity. Also talk about the university financing model that is absorbing and catering for all the students at the university. Again, talk about the increment in the loan funding from 48 billion to nearly 84 billion. That's inclusivity in the education. Now talk about the health sector. NHIF in 2022 was recruiting, or rather was accommodating 7 million Kenyans. Fast forward in 2026, we are talking about SHA covering 30 million Kenyans. That is inclusivity. When you talk about the economy that was there in the 10-point agenda in inclusivity in all spheres, we've seen the cost of living come down. And that is attributed to other factors aside. We can talk about the fertilizer subsidy that was reduced from 7,500 to 2,500, and it saw the maize farmers, it saw the maize farmers boost their produce from 44 million bags in 2022 to 78 million bags in 2026. So that is in inclusivity. And when you talk about devolution, Trevor, devolution, Trevor, prior to the implementation of the 10-point agenda, counties were receiving a cake share of 385 billion. And in 2026, we are talking about 415 billion. And again, talk about the timely disbursement. Again, the point that has not been implemented, which...
Now we'll come to the 20%. You've given the 8 out of 10 and you've given the justification why you've given 8 out of 10. So we'll come to the 2 and find out why the 2 is missing. Mundalo, what is your verdict? Scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give it slightly above average. That is a 6. And Trevor, this is not the first report that we're having in this country. We have had so many reports. And most of the time, the reports that we have always had in this country always go and they're on the shelves. Yeah, they're nice documents, and then we put them on the shelf. That's why I had a big... I was not one of the biggest optimists when this committee was set up to track this implementation. But I must be able to say that listening to the report and also having been in this country, I think it is the first report that has something tangible that we can actually write home about. Because especially as a person who was and has been heavily within the Azimio brigade, I think one of our pet things in this report would be about the compensation of victims of the protests. And it is very good that the committee decided that it will not just span about the last 3 years, but go all the way down, I think, to almost to 2013. Actually, the president said down to even 2007. And you look at the bulk of those people who have actually been affected by this, are heavily Azimio, ODM, and the people, especially from the western regions and that. So the fact that we cannot be able to actually bring back people to life, but I think it's a step in the right direction that we are now having conversations around compensating them. I think it's a step in the right direction. We are now having a 2 billion allocation to go and deal with that, where the president himself said now they have put together, they have a comprehensive list of everyone who actually needs to be compensated. They have now adhered to the court ruling, working together with the Kenya National Human Rights Commission to be able to do this. And I think that was a step in the right direction. Of course, again, one of the biggest issues is not just in Kenya, but Africa, is matters about young people and youth inclusion in many, many aspects. And seeing that and just seeing the young people who do not have a university education receiving a capital from the Nyota Fund to be able to start something up with their lives, to starting to see the young people who are being afforded jobs through the affordable housing. And I think by the quote of the figures, about 640,000, starting to see that the young people are even being included in seeking job opportunities abroad. Mm-hmm. I think it is a step in the right direction. It has not reached all the young people. It has not been able to solve every problem. But I've always said that nation building is work in progress. And I think that is actually work in progress. There was also an aspect of inclusivity that I felt was very, very fundamental, especially to our people in the marginalized areas. Today, you are having a 500 million education grant to sponsor students from the marginalized areas. I think that is quite incredible. Yeah. I also look at the fact that the president has been able to establish a directorate to deal with the marginalized people under the office of the president. I think that takes their issues at the pinnacle stage where the issues need to be. That we will no longer just be speaking about the marginalized people and having good stories and good rhetoric about it. Now they can actually be able to present their issues because they understand them better, and not to anybody else but at the office of the president, alongside the policy for it. I think that to me was quite a good thing. And of course there are many areas like implementation of the NADCO report. You see Parliament now being involved. And I think by and large, I think those are some of the things that I feel like they have been able to actually move in the right direction. For the very first time, yeah. I think you would correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the very first time we're having a committee in Kenya that has been established and did not just go sit, collect allowances, and everything went to the shelf and we moved on like nothing happened. I think for the very first time we're having a launch of a report that actually has tangible deliverables and factual things that we can actually put our hands to them and be able to say that it's indeed true that this has actually been done. Okay, we'll come back and find out why the 40% is missing and what do you think they haven't gotten right. But Marvin, what is your verdict?
I'm listening to my two predecessors speak about the same, and it's a bit... I would want to say this. I want to avoid the temptation. I want us to avoid the temptation to fall into this trap whereby we forget the root cause of why we set up this 10-point agenda in the first place, or how it came about. In communication, there's something called agenda setting and framing. We elected in this country a government, and the government had its manifesto, and there are things that are expected for a government to do. And we need to judge the government based on the premise of what they did and they judged us to do. And part of it was not happening. The people are not feeling that specific growth. We had the government mentioning specific items. We talked about the fact that the budget, the economy is growing, the fact that we are getting to grow the economy, but the young people, the people are feeling a bit overtasked. There was an element of disenfranchisement, and that element is what caused the young people in this country to actually come up and say, no, we do not even like the budget proposals. We do not like what you're doing because we are not feeling it. And they came out to protest. But what happened was that that specific protest, that specific dissent was very heavily thwarted. And when it was very heavily thwarted, what happened is that in the onslaught of that, the political people came up and elite people sat down. The young people who were actually on the forefront of these specific discussions were not necessarily included in this discussion. These were basically some two politicians who came together, sat down, and an elite discussion was done. They came up with this 10-point agenda to change the narrative from what it is that was actually important. And the first thing we need to ask ourselves is why? Why was it in the first place that guys or young people were going to the streets?
You don't think any of this 10-point agenda captures
I
what
do not
the issues
believe.
were?
I believe the 10-point agenda was basically a red herring. It was supposed to change us from thinking about the problems that were there in the first place. But none of it. It was basically to bring a political coalition and to try to quell the tensions in the country.
So what were the
time.
problems, Mabin?
And the main problem that young people were facing at that specific time was basically the fact that they were not feeling the economic growth of the country impacting them directly.
Which is item
And
number
I
4.
do not believe up to this time as we speak, even as we speak today, the common mwananchi, and I'm telling you as someone who is on the ground, the common mwananchi is not feeling that specific bit of economic
What you just mentioned is item number 4.
That
economic
item
investment 4. in the youth.
This is element. Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. So we talk about the Nyota program, which is part and parcel of item number 4. And that is a specific program where we went to the World Bank and we took in some particular loan that we're supposed to pay back, and we're giving it back to young people to the tune of 20,000, 30,000 per young person.
It's supposed to be 50 million, but you start with
it's supposed to actually come up to 50,000 Kenyan shillings. And the big question is that if you want to actually realistically give these young people an opportunity to grow, if you want to realistically make these people to grow, you need to create economic growth opportunities where these people get gainful employment, where they can actually gain something. You need to implement and put your money in structures that actually create jobs, not tokenism.
And you haven't seen that?
So what I've seen is tokenism. What I've seen is an element whereby we are creating a Kibandaski economy. We are creating an element whereby we are trying to create 10 million hawkers, as opposed to actually creating 10 million jobs, so that these people can get meaningful jobs. What the government should be doing is, 1, bring down the cost of power. Our cost of power in this country is among the highest in the region. The cost of power in Kenya is 6 times the cost of power in Ethiopia. So what will happen is that an industry that would be set up in Kenya to actually create jobs for these young people, for them to get jobs, would rather go set foot in Ethiopia as opposed to come set up in Kenya. And because we haven't done it, what we are doing is that we are doing tokenism. If I gave you 20,000 shillings today and told you to start a business, I can assure you that if I come back a year later, what I will find is a depressed person, and with not the 20,000 is lost because you've not created any business worth creating.
I've had young people sitting where you're sitting right now, and they say that they've created businesses out of that money. It just depends on who.
I'm on the ground. I'm on the ground, and I can tell you that the young people in Hamisi, where I come from, and many of them who have been given this particular money, have actually come out and told me, thank you very much, you would have liked this particular money, but I would have preferred to get a job where I earn that 20,000 every month. I would actually prefer to get a job where every month I get that 20,000. That would actually be a more sustainable way. We have to start looking at how do we sustainably bring our young people, because imagine, Trevor, 75% of the young people in this country, of the population in this country is below 35 years old. 85% of the population in this country is below 45 years old. The level of unemployment and underemployment in Kenya is critically high.
Okay.
So when we want to get solutions for this, which is the role of government, we have to create sustainable solutions.
Okay, so what did you rate it?
Yes, so if I were to rate, the 10-point agenda in the first place, I would bring it down to one first point, that the main point agenda for the 10-point agenda was to bring political political easiness and make us forget where we want. I would probably give it a 2 out of 10.
Okay,
yes.
We'll discuss that also shortly. Valerie?
Okay, I think...
Start with the verdict, then you tell me why.
I think I'll measure on agenda number 4 and number 6, and I'm going to give it a 1 out of 10.
So 4 is economic investment in the youth, and 6 is safeguarding the right to peaceful assembly.
Yeah.
And you're giving it 1 out of 10.
1 out of 10.
Okay.
I think concerning the 4th agenda on the promoting and protecting the right of youth, especially like income and employment, let's talk about the Nyota Fund. You're giving me 20,000 to start something, but what if it doesn't grow? What will I do next month? But these 20,000, a number of us were given. It can be used to create something that can give us job opportunities, that can be giving us the same 20,000 each and every month, so that I can't lack the same 20,000 which you have given me this month, next month. Like, we need something sustainable. As much as His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, our president, is trying to help us out, but we need sustainability in our economy. So is
that the way you look at it from university's perspective, that if I give you 20,000 instead of starting a business, you'd rather I give you the 20,000 every other month?
Yeah, because like we need something sustainable. Okay, let's say, for example...
You need a job.
Yeah, we need a job.
Can't you create one yourself?
As much as I will wish to create one, Trevor, we literally know it's not that easy. It's not that easy.
In fact, most of the businesses fail in the first 3 years.
Yeah, thank you so much.
But that doesn't mean there are people who have not done a business, right?
But sir, what if I create one and it fails?
What if it doesn't?
That's a risk, and what if it doesn't?
Let
Valerie argue a point. She's arguing her point. It's her point.
I'm arguing for my point, and I'm going to stand strong on it.
Why,
The thing I would like to say is, in school, those who applied for help, they always get help. I think it ranges from 20,000 to 28,000 each and every semester. How does it help them? It is not sustainable, because you'll give me, okay, let's say for the first semester this year, it started in January. You gave me the 20,000 in January, but now we are in March. I don't have a way of maybe getting food at the end of the day, because the money you gave me, I used it and it's no longer there. Like, it's all about sustainability, something that can sustain me. Yes, you're helping me to start up something. It can grow and become something better, but what if it doesn't grow? You see, not everyone is educated economic-wise. Not everyone is prepared. Maybe I come from Mashamba back there at home. I'm not used to this. I came to Nairobi and now things are so hard, and now His Excellency Ruto has given me 20,000. I've tried to set up a business, but it's not working. I don't have any other place to get another 20,000 from. How am I going to help myself? And I think we are the stronghold of this economy. So the moment we don't get something that will sustain us, definitely we will fail. And you, as our parents, you'll be at that point here. I really helped you to get where you are. What happened? And something also I would like to put across is right to peaceful assembly and protest. That's in Article 37 of the Constitution. I have the Constitution here, so I read it. And what I would like to say is, as much as sometimes it brings tension to the country, but the saddest thing is we are always peaceful, and still we get casualties, we get death cases, we get arrests, and it is so sad. And it's something that was in the 10-point agenda. We thought it will change, but it hasn't.
Yeah.
Like in 2024, we had a case where it will remain in our minds and we will keep on remembering about it. So as much as we had the 10-point agenda, but for Agenda 4 and Agenda 6, nothing was done. That is my status.
So that's why you're giving them 1 out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay. Dave?
Thank you. I think some of our panelists might not be living in Kenya, but we are also from the ground. I want to say that the 10-point agenda, in the youth perspective, I'd rate it at 6. And I'll just run direct to point number 4, because that is the elephant in the room. We have to give ourselves time. We have to give ourselves time for growth. We have to give ourselves time to look at the 10-point agenda as a process, because we know that there are some of the agendas there that will be implemented. Some have been implemented partly, but there are some that needs the parliamentary procedures, because there are some that even need us to go to a referendum. So I know if people are to judge Ruto or measure the 10-point agenda from the angle of implementing all the 10, then they will say he has failed, because we are looking at, for example, compensation of the victims. We are looking at a case of 207, 208 post-election violence, where those who died in all these post-election violences, the people that die the most are the young people. Because they are the ones who have the energy, and they are always at the forefront to exchange with police and the gangs that we just spoke about when we were starting. So personally, I want to appreciate the fact that we had an ADCO report, but after the Gen Z protests, Ruto and Raila came up with the 10-point agenda, because the person in Ruto tried to call us to the table as young people. We have to be very honest. We told him to meet us at X, but he did call. He did ask.
He actually did meet you at X, and it was mostly just...
when he came there, people did not want to talk to him. People started insulting him. So that is why some of us, like me, decided that I think it's time that we decide to work with the tax collector, because you cannot be on the forefront all the time fighting where you pay your taxes. That is where you receive services. So it's either you work with them so that we align things so that I can receive a service because I pay tax. But in line with the 10-point agenda, we must give the government the time to fully implement whatever they can implement. Then we agree as a country that can we go into a referendum so that we can even have, for example, the office of the official opposition leader, which is not there in our constitution. But there are politicians that call themselves opposition leaders. We don't even know where they derive that from. The Katiba of this country recognizes the leader of minority in the National Assembly. So of the projects that Ruto is doing that are creating jobs for our youths, of our people. For example, we know that currently over 640,000 young people have been absorbed in the affordable infrastructure that are happening in the country. The ESP markets, the buildings that Ruto is putting up. The people who are employed there, many of them are young people. But I'm not looking at them as young, I'm looking at them as welders, I'm looking at masons, I'm looking at young engineers, I'm looking at young architects who are working in that premise, who are employed. They go, some of them are on contract, some of them are paid per day actually, but we are looking at 640,000 people absorbed into a system. We have, for example, the Climate Works program that absorbed around 110,000 people. And it's still actually soon to roll it out so that it can take place in the whole country. We know how these things help our people. And if you connect this thing to the issue of goons, you will realize, and I think personally I'll thank the president for even coming up with such projects, because we know that the first cause of those things that we see happening, the vices, is unemployment. Because both the educated and the uneducated are both unemployed. So we end up scrambling for the little that we have. And from January, I think up to February, Ruto was disbursing the Nyota program. And that is where I saw the hypocrisy in this nation, where someone is insisting that 22,000 cannot start a business. Yet, a piki, when you take it on loan, you pay a deposit of 32,000. If you have been a business, if you add your 10,000 and you now get 22,000, I think it's very possible that you might now want to have your own piki, so that you work, as you feed yourself, you can pay the other balance. We have seen around, I think my sister here is in university, but I don't know where she buys her clothes, because when we were in college, we would buy most of our clothes from our colleagues. And they would maybe it's a business of around 5 to 10,000. They get their 5K, go to Gikomba. For example, if you're in Kisumu, you go to Kibuye. They get the best that the youth will buy.
Camera.
The camera, and then they come and sell to us. It is not a business that requires 100,000. It requires 5,000 Kenya shillings, or even 10,000 Kenya shillings. And even a bale of clothes ranges from 16 to 25,000 Kenya shillings. So I don't know where we are now not agreeing. For example, me, I wear mutumba. And I know, for example, we are going to Saturday. I know people will be going to Kibuye on Monday. My person, we call him Pedi. He'll come with something, man, this trouser can fit you well. Yeah. And he gives it to me, then I'll pay him on Friday. So this is not a business that requires 150,000. It is 5. Meaning, if the president boosted me with the 22,000 as a grant, not even a loan, because people are hitting it that it's a loan from the World Bank. But to me, as a youth of this country, that is a grant. They told me, I'm giving you 25K, I'm saving for you 3K, but 22,000, it is there on your phone, on your M-Pesa. And there was a process. Before the money was given, there was a process. People were trained for business. Yeah. They sat down with them for a 3-day training session, and they were trained on how to use that money. Okay. And even the president himself went and told them, Bana, don't get the money, and then tomorrow a lady starts calling you Bazenga. Or you start, no, take your money, go and do business. Yeah. A questionnaire, we were helping actually some of my friends, I was helping the young people who applied to answer the questionnaires. They were asked, are you eligible to do business? Are you a person living with disability? Yeah. All those questions were asked. So I think maybe some of these people do not live in the realities of the Kenyan economy. Okay. That of what 22,000 Kenya shillings can do to a person. Okay. Because we have seen young people selling smokies. Yeah. We have seen young people even selling bananas along our highways. We have seen them hawking. This money was the target of this money was those young people. Okay. And I think we're also forgetting the development in the education ministry, where Rais has tried and employed 100,000 Kenya teachers. That is something that has never happened in this country within a short period of time. That is 3 years.
I think, Trevor, let him finish. I'm giving Elino the chance. Yes. Elino now. Okay. What is your rating?
Thank you very much. My rating on the agenda number 4 and 6, I will say it's at 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
Why 8 out of 10? On matters youth economic empowerment and entrepreneurship and job creation, I would say, first of all, the government has had 2 major programs. That was the first option of Hustler Fund, and then now the Nyota project. When the Hustler Fund was first brought into picture, it was all about loaning and getting it back. Kenyans got into it and got loans. they never made the returns, the effort of making the returns. But for those who made the returns on the loans, were later given openings. If you're having a youth group, a women group based on business, you're allowed to borrow loans. So there are people who benefited from this. And then Nyota program came. What is Nyota program? Let me educate my land friends. Nyota program is a project of the World Bank in partnership with the government of Kenya. What is their major agenda and their target group? They are targeting youth from the age of 18 to 29 years and an extension up to 35 years. Nyota program does not only offer one program. It has 3 components. One is business support. It is the one we are talking about, 50,000 shillings. And how is this 50,000 shillings distributed? It is distributed into phases. First, 25,000, which the president has already done in partnership with the World Bank, and then another phase will come of another 25,000. But then when you check from the programs, during the disbursement, a youth is receiving 22,000. Why? 3,000 is into their savings.
Okay.
The project is promoting the culture of savings among the youths. So through NSSF, there's a program that is created called Haba Haba Savings. So they are taught how to save. This 3,000 is theirs. They are saving. It is not for the government. It is for this particular beneficiary. Before they are given this money, as my brother has said, those who are saying, you're given this 22,000, but then you don't know what you're going to do with this 22,000. They were taken through a 5-day training, not 3. 5 days training in prior to preparation of receiving the funds. They are taught business skills. What options will you have to spend this money on your business? So that is the training that they went through. After that, the disbursement occurred into phases in different countries, in different counties within the country, as we had seen. So they received total empowerment. So this is a startup capital. After starting, another phase will come to improve the business.
Okay.
So already, they're going through something that is called mentorship. Those who already received the 22,000, the people who are involved in the project, they're going to visit these particular business startups and they see the progress. So it is a total empowerment program. Number 2, the second component offered by the Nyota project, it's called on-the-job experience. Who qualifies for this on-the-job experience? Any youth between age 18 to 29 and an extension of 35 years for persons living with a disability who has not gone beyond Form 4. To mean even a Class 8 or a Class 6 is a beneficiary of this. What do they offer? Training programs, more so the hand jobs and soft skills to these persons. And after the training, they're going to be done for what is called craftsmanship and then placement into job environments. They are certified. Yeah. They're given certificates after this training.
So there's some level of sustainability.
Yes.
Okay.
A third one is called recognition of prior learning. Recognition of prior learning is given to the same group of people, but then this person is having skills, but they don't have certificates. So they will go through an examination process, then they will be certified by NITA.
Okay.
So they will be having the physical certificates with them. So they will be having opportunities in different areas.
Okay.
Another thing that is offered by the government through this project, under the State Department of Youth Affairs and Creative Economy, there is something that is called VIVA, that is Vuka Vijana Afya. It is in partnership with Germany. So it is offered in counties like Kisumu, Mombasa, and Nairobi, the 3 counties.
Yeah.
So youths who have already qualified with such skills and are certified are included in this program. Okay. There is also liaison with the labor mobility. Right now, there are 100 youths that are getting prepared and having skills in the medical field that are ready and set that are going to be taken to Canada.
Okay.
So as we can see from that scale, let's not see this Nyota project like as in of 50,000. Are we now getting what the program entails and everything that is going on? Right now, on-the-job experience training is already occurring in 14 counties.
Okay.
So it is something that is ongoing and it is on the ground. If you visit the ground, the youth are seriously benefiting from this government.
Okay, Serem, let me come to you now. Let's talk about what is not working. You give it at 8 out of 10 and you highlighted the issues that are working. Where's the other 2? What is not working according to you?
Okay. Maybe first, before I mention what's not working, I've heard my friends talk about 20,000 being little money. You know, Trevor, when we come to Nairobi, we tend to be a bit mischievous about ourselves and lie to ourselves on some issues because we see 20,000 as a little money. But that gentleman, that lady, that young girl on the grassroots, that is much enough for her to start up a business. To what hasn't been achieved in the 10-point agenda, when you talk about this rule of law and justice, we've seen nearly 80% of it achieved, 20 hasn't been achieved, because recently we saw the appointment of 11 appellate judges and 20 high court judges. That was a milestone. However, what hasn't been achieved is there was a proposal to have at least a high court in almost nearly all the sub-counties in our country, but that hasn't been achieved, and we are optimistic that it will. Again, on the issue of devolution, we've seen resources being sent to the grassroots, being increased from 385 billion to 430 billion and so on and forth. However, there is this issue of county assemblies receiving their financial autonomy. That hasn't been achieved. And we know once achieved, that will be a game changer in strengthening of the devolution. Yes.
Okay. Mundalo, you also gave it a 6 out of 10. What has not been achieved?
Yeah, I give it a 6, Trevor, because even by the words of the people who actually launched the report themselves, there are things that are still within the implementation framework. For instance, when you look at the full implementation of the NADCO report, they have 9 bills in Parliament. They have so far only worked on 3, and so that means there is some room for them to actually do something better. And when you also look at matters of corruption, yes, I agree that there has been the digitization of government systems that has actually made these even better. There is better collection of money from different government agencies. The pilferage has gone down, but now it is time that is also felt in the economy, so that the people also feel that now that we have been able to minimize or stop have some safeguard measures on corruption, there should be an impact on the economy. So the people should actually feel like now that we have more money, what is it actually doing for us? So those are the things that I feel like the process of implementation is it's still ongoing. There are some bills that are still in Parliament. There are things that are still being done. We have victims, like when you look at the policemen who are now facing IPOA. We have some convictions that have been done, but we have others that have not yet been done. So it is still something pending. So it is a work in progress, and I think that's why the president also was able to give it a 60-day extension. So there is work that is in progress, and there is something that actually needs to be done even more. The reality of this, Trevor, is that the problem with some of us is that, you see, the governments do not exist for a romantic relationship. So it's not a question of love and hate. Government is not there to be loved or hated. But the issue is this: whether you love government or you don't love it, whether you love President Ruto or you don't, facts don't change. And unfortunately, some of us think that our emotions should be able to guide our reasoning. And that's why then we think that just because I have this aggression, therefore things should not be able to work. It cannot change the fact that 100,000 teachers have actually been employed. It can't. It cannot change that the fact that there is government digitization. My good lady here has just explained the Nyota Fund. That cannot change just because you are existing in what I call sentimentalism. Sentimentalism is argument by emotion, where you raise the voice of your emotion and not the voice of your reason. And that's why when you are pushed to the corner and asked, okay, fine, so what would you have better government done? Then you don't have the answer. Because all of us, it is very fashionable, Trevor, for all of us to say, instead of giving people 20,000 to start businesses, give them a job that can pay them 20,000 every month. That's fashionable. It sounds very good on camera. But one of the people who needs popularity the most, one of the people who needs to be loved the most is government. If that was so easy, all of them would have done it. In fact, all governments in Africa would have employed all the young people and paid all of them and gotten re-elected. So we must be able to base our arguments on the basis of fact. We can't be able to argue, Trevor, that the 10-point agenda was about William Ruto and Raila Odinga. It was about ODM and UDA. And what is ODM and UDA? These are the two political parties that carry the highest number of people in Kenya by data and by fact, because we went to the ballot and voted. Because when you talk about President William Ruto, he's not just an individual. This is a person with over 7-point-something million votes. Talk about Raila Odinga. So the combination of these two people is actually the country. So we can't trivialize things into making them about this person and the other person. We have to get into the facts. And that's why I loved your question. You said, how do you rate the 10-point agenda and why? And most of us, when we cannot find the reason why, we look for sentiments. We start looking, we push emotions instead of pushing reason. There is no need to push emotion. This is purely a factual conversation that we can all have. We can just be able to say that NADCO report, has it been implemented or not? Have the 3 bills gone through? Yeah, when we talk about inclusivity, is it true that there is actually a policy now on the marginalized? Is it true that there's a directorate at the office of the president? Those are facts. Is it true that e-procurement is now happening in Kenya? Those are not things that we decide on the basis of hate, love. It is just the fact. So I've always argued that it does not matter what your emotional appeal is, but let it not move you away from the facts. Because when you move away from the facts, then you raise the volume of your emotion, and unfortunately, most of the time, you then reduce the voice of sense. At the end of the day, it is not about re-election or no re-election of this government, because most of our argument is based on that. But can we be able to push government to deliver? Can we be able to push to ensure that this government delivers for us now? Okay. The problem with us, Trevor, sometimes is that our hate for government can be so heavy that even when we are hospitalized and we are on a hospital bed and SHA works for us, we will still be disappointed.
Marvin, yours was a 2 out of 10. What has worked for you?
And here for me, let me look at it from this particular regard.
Yeah.
I think it is important for us to be very factual, as you said, on some of these particular issues and actually conquer why. But majority of this particular discussion is actually about the young people. And we want to, all of us love this country. All of us want to see this particular country succeed. And we have to look at, when you look at economy, you have to look at it both from a microeconomic perspective and a macroeconomic perspective. We have around 14 million young people between the age of 18 and 29. And out of this, between the age of 14 and 35, 14 million young people. Out of these 14 million young people, the level of unemployment and underemployment is a staggering 67%. So we're basically saying that out of these 14 million young people, we are basically looking at close to 10 million of them that are either unemployed or underemployed. We have this particular fund that we are all dishing out, the Nyota Fund. And let's get factual. How many young people ultimately are going to get this particular 20,000? 110,000 young people. 110,000 young people out of a group of around, let's even look at 10, let's put it as a bulk of 10 million. We're basically looking at below 1%, 0.8% to be specific. The young people are actually getting this. So firstly, it's a drop in the ocean in terms of the impact on the young people. And then someone actually asked in terms of why is it that we're saying we are not necessarily trying to rubbish that 20,000 is small money. No, we're basically saying that looking at realistically aspects, there are things that we need to be in a position to look at. You are not going to learn how to do a business in 5 days seminar. You are not going to become a business person overnight just from a young people. And I feel we become very unfair to young people. The people we need to be putting at the forefront of starting businesses should not be people coming straight from school. This should be people, I am an advocate of transition at, say, ages of 45, 50, of people who are maybe in the civil service, transition and go to the private practice and start businesses because you have gotten the experience. You understand how to run a business. This person is coming out from school. Give them mentorship, internship. Give them an opportunity to learn. Give them an opportunity to understand. And then as a government, let us create institutions that enable macroeconomic growth. Let's bring down the cost of power. Let's make let's make it attractive for the Kenyan economy to attract companies to come in and set base here, so that not just the young people, but all of us can get meaningful employment toward this particular regard. And then when we want to give out, because for me, the Hustler Fund, the Nyota program, it comes down as tokenism. And tokenism will never get us out of poverty. It will not get us out of poverty. So if you want the facts, my brother, the fact is that it is 0.8% of young people. So if you look at all the young people in this country, I can tell you, ask any young people out of wherever you are, out of here, how many of us will probably, if you qualify, go to Nyota Fund? Out of every 100, only one would probably get that. What about the 99? Where do they go? Let's look at other aspects of the 10-point agenda, assuming that I would want to be invited to discuss that. Let me discuss, for example, the item about the justice for the young people. We're talking about compensation, and everyone is talking about compensation. But what about justice? Do we want to reduce the lives of our young people, of any life, into a check number? Do you want to reduce it to a check number? Or do you want to create a Kenya where we're actually not killing these young people in the first place? Do you want to tell me it is now institutionally correct that yes, 2 years ago, you could go down and demonstrate and you'd not be killed? If today you go out and demonstrate, will you not be killed? Have we done the institutional requirements to make sure that we are now a better society where our young people feel safer on the streets if they were to take care of the Article 37? The answer is no. Okay. Now, let's look at, for example, the initial aspect of the NADCO report. And I like that the president was actually asked on the report, on the ground, about this. Everyone talking about the NADCO report talk about the offices of official opposition, which is creating offices for the politicians. But do you know that our government is illegal? Our government is illegal because it does not respect the 1/3 gender dispensarity. So actually, constitutionally, our government should not be in existence. And Maraga, I think, pointed that out. Yeah. How come that is not the major aspect of us saying, what are we going to make sure that by the time we are going to do the next election, that we will have the 1/3 gender rule being implemented? Let's talk about corruption, which is one of the particular issues on the 10-point agenda. And let's look at the Auditor General's reports. Yeah. Let's look at all the newspaper headlines that you've been having on this particular newspaper for the last 1 year. Yeah. Let's look at the kind of pilferage that we see within this particular government. Okay. Let's look at, for example, right now, we are talking about NTSA has come up the other day to say that we are going to start instant fines. Yeah. But what happens there? One of the companies that is actually going to be collecting the fines is not even the judiciary. It's a private company called Pesaprint, which when you look back at it, you find that the person behind this particular, the roots of Pesaprint, goes back to State House. The question is, if we can see this brazen corruption on our institutions, if we can see these things, if it walks like a duck, looks like a duck, and I'm sitting here among my fellow young people, and I'm feeling sad because I'm feeling as if it is a Stockholm syndrome. I cannot imagine that there is a young person who can actually stand here and actually say that this government is working for them. Okay. It is not.
All right. Valerie, I'll give you a chance to respond. Valerie, yes? 1 out of 10. So what is that one? What do you think worked out of this whole 10?
I think, Trevor, I started measuring on Agenda 4 and 6. Yeah. And clearly you can see as much. By the way, I'm so sad this morning. I hope all of us are youths in this room.
Marvin and Valerie are the only sad ones.
I just hope all of us in these rooms, in this room, are youths. Because sincerely speaking, even if we were to give a poll out there and say how many youths received the Nyota Fund, you'll be surprised. Or maybe where I come from, they never applied for it. But in real sense, a lot of people applied for that thing, and a lot of people never got a chance to be part of it. And I take it, yes, it has its advantages and stuff, but it is advantageous to who? You might get it is advantageous to someone who had something before, but for this someone who didn't have something before, it is not helping them, or maybe they did not get the chance. I'm not undermining 20,000 shillings in Kenya, no, but my friend talked about pikipiki. How will I learn on how to ride a pikipiki in 5 days? How will I learn Trevor in real sense? By the way, I'm not using my emotions. I'm talking about facts. As a youth, how will I learn to run a business in 5 days? It doesn't make any sense. As much as you like to empower us and everything, empowerment doesn't take 5 days. I'm using 5 days because that's what she stated. You can't help me to get to know how to run a shop in 5 days, unless if where I come from, I was taught that, or maybe I was doing business in college, let's say it. And something else I wanted to talk about was development in the education ministry. It was just the other day, in 2025, even, I think the second semester in our time, lecturers were on strike. We lost something like 1 month and a week. And right now we have to extend our lecture sessions. Don't you guys see that? Lectures are supposed to be paid by the government. Should we be happy because they went on strike and say, the government is working? It is not, and we won't hide. We will say, it is not, especially in the education sector. Yes, it's helping in some place, but there is this place that it is not helping.
Okay.
I can give it a credit, yes, but kuna hii place yenye they're not doing whatever they're supposed to do. We are in schools, but then sometimes we even have missing marks because some lecturers have not been paid, because the government has not disbursed money to the school. You see such kind of things. And all this empowerment starts from the education sector. Why should I have the best education from nursery, primary, secondary? Then when I come to university, I get stuck. It doesn't make any sense. As much as the government is doing its thing, there is this part that it's not doing. And to talk something about, still on the youths, I think these people wanafaa kuingia ground, because hata in our institutions, I remember, I think it was Honorable Murkomen, if I'm not wrong, I'm not so sure. He was talking of student in the university and he mentioned about University of Nairobi, wamekata kutoka kwa shule. Do you know why they're doing that? Because they don't have anything to do out here. People are registering as voters. Why is it that youth are being called in to go, like we are literally being called in, youth, please come and register as voters? Why is it that if the government was helping us, why shouldn't we go and register as voters easily? We're doing that because we are at that point of, should we give a government another chance or should we not? You see?
Will staying away from registering help in any way?
Yeah.
How?
So,
how will it help, staying away from registering as voters?
We had that conversation some few days ago at school, and some were arguing from point of, how sure are we the leaders we will vote in will be our leaders? How sure are we? You see, there is this notion here, 2-term and 1-term. How sure are we the government will be a 1-term? And still, there is this side of, how sure are we the government will be a 2-term? And something else.
So the solution is to stay away from it all.
Yeah, and something else, Trevor.
It's interesting.
We had this congregation, and it was talking about Sisi Ndio Sifuna. It was a very big congregation.
Okay.
Tell me why I should go to such a congregation while we have Nyota Fund that's helping us, while we have a government that's fighting for us. By the way, the government might feel like we are fighting it. We are not. We are trying to pass out a message.
Okay.
We are not being helped as much as they're trying.
All right.
Yeah.
Dave, you give it a 6 out of 10. What is not working? Because you didn't give it a 10 out of 10. So
yes,
what, according to you, is work in
because,
progress?
There are points in the agenda that, I repeat, still require processes, procedures, so that we can implement them fully. And that goes back to, for example, the implementation of
the NADCO report.
The NADCO report.
Yeah.
We also have full analysis of who was affected, which family was affected. We think the government still also needs to go back again to the ground to make sure that, actually where I come from, I don't know if people have participated in protests and seen people die. So for me, that is where my heart really stays. where for the first time, can we have these people compensated? Can we have our neighbors who we saw die and leave children and leave siblings be compensated for the first time? Because that is a reconciliation process for us as a country. Because yes, they cannot bring back the lives that were lost. But compensating those families would be a step ahead that even Raila Amolo Odinga, I think, will be very happy, that because it sees supporters, many of them who have been killed in those protests. But going with the progress, I don't know how our people here look at how they measure progress. Because I believe that progress is, if the universal health coverage under NHIF in the past had 8 million registered, but now it is covering around 30 million people, though the people who are contributing are less. But those who can get primary health, health care are around 30 million as a country, and we are 53 million people. I think that, to me, is progress. That is how I see progress. If 0% was employed, 0% of this was employed as of 2022, but there is 112,000 who were supported with startup capital to start businesses. To me, I look at that as progress. If there were 110,000 people in Nairobi, young people who are not employed but can now go and help with cleaning the Nairobi River, can help with, clearing drainage. If they can get something at the end of the day, and they cannot, she's saying, she's wondering that how, if you give this person money for business, you won't find them in the rallies, because they are very busy with their business. They are very busy with the work that they are mandated to do. For me, I look at that as progress. Okay. And if I look at a group, if you have 14 million people, and we have close to 1 million who are involved in the process of building this country, to me, as a young person, I'm looking at progress. I'm seeing progress. All right. I'm seeing 1 + 1, which is 2. Yeah. So we need to really rip off emotions from this. We'll have to repeat that, because we are also not, we all know we can get things to help us oppose this government, because we have had governments, and even the countries that are at par are still having opposition. Yeah. They are still having problems. So Kenya, that is 62 years old, and has had a systemic historical problems, is now trying to come up with systems that can help us. Yeah. Because we know that what can help really the bigger population of this country is industrialization. Okay. And that is what, if I was to ask, can you advise the president on what to do? Can we build up industries? But the microeconomic startups are also industries. Okay. Though they are looking at them as not businesses. Okay. And that alarm means it's time for us to close. Elino. Yeah. And Elino also gave it an 8 out of 10. So where is that 2? What do you think is not working there?
Okay, I gave it 8 out of 10 because I think I've elaborated why 8. And again, I'll still give more clarification why the 2 is remaining and why more 8. Yeah. I mentioned it is really, really wrong to criticize when you've not learned, you've not researched, and you're not reading. It is really, really wrong.
Very.
When I say 5 days training, not that I do the project, no. I do a follow-up of the project. They were doing a 5 days training, but then I mentioned in between. There's a mentorship program that is going in between. Each and every beneficiary of this capital is having a mentor. And some of them even indulge the business, and they're doing it as a group. It is not necessarily if you get the 22, you'll do it alone. They're also mentored. If you're not able to do it alone, they do it as a group. And in this group, again, they're able even to loan somewhere. However, this project is not a loan, it is a grant. Why now the 2%? I feel the larger group that has been targeted are people who have not gone beyond Form 4. But now, what about those who are certified? Those with the diploma, certificates, degrees? That is now the team that I feel the government should now focus on. The other group is well done. The project was focusing 820,000 Kenyans. That is why you find in a group of 100 youths, you might get 2 beneficiaries or 1. But 1,450 wards across the country was covered. Are you now understanding why now the 1% against 100 youth sitting together? But then this is not a scam. When they receive the money, they go there. You see them showing their phones. When you go to the ground, you'll find youths in each and every empowerment centers undertaking this training. But now we kindly request the government, please involve us. Several youths don't have employment. We have the papers.
Yeah.
Are you coming up with other projects so that you can consider us?
Okay.
This will be a plus to us, and the 10-point agenda number 4 shall have come to a success.
All right. Mundalo, you wanted a chance to respond. Just 1 minute.
Yeah,
and I'll take feedback and we close.
Okay, it's fine, Trevor. First of all, I just wanted to respond to my brother from insurance sector. Remember, I think because of his background in insurance, he's believing that youth employment means tie and shirt. Because most of those young people, by the way, in the insurance sector, when you meet them outside here, all of them are looking for jobs, yet they are in the insurance sector. The reality is this, Trevor. First of all, you can't be able to say that people who should start business should be 45 years and above. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, all of them started their businesses in their teens. So first of all, you can't box entrepreneurship on age. It cannot work like that. 2, it is sentimentalism to say that compensation means there will be no justice. Compensation is another element. I was in the Azimio protests, and in the Azimio protests, one of the things that used to take us to the streets, we used to push government to compensate victims of police brutality. That is one of the elements that took us to those streets. So when it now happens, I cannot be able to say that now we now move back and say, no, it's not important. And that's the problem we usually have, Trevor, where we push for something, when it starts happening, we again say it is unnecessary. One of the critical issues that we're having with matters of Nyota Fund, that is the heavy weight of the debate here, is that those who say the most against it are not beneficiaries and they are not interested in it. Yet Nyota Fund was for those who are interested in it and those who are pursuing business. So when they say there is a 5-day training, like my sister there puts it, it was a training for those who are already in business. It asked them whether they were in business. So it was actually to help advance them. It was not to start them off. And so all these things, and I've kept saying that nation building is a work in progress. Those of us who keep seeing what government is doing is not because we have chosen not to see the bad thing. It is because we have chosen to say that nation building is a work in progress. I was part of the Jubilee administration. That time when we brought Kazim Taani, we were castigated. We were told, why are you putting young people to slash? Yeah? I'm glad that today it has again come back as climate works, because the country must be moved forward progressively. Okay. If there is something that must be done, then let it be done. Okay. We must not always be able, it is fashionable to always be opposition, and sometimes the beauty with being in opposition is that you sound intelligent. But most of the time, it does not necessarily mean you're making sense. The truth is this, Trevor. Nation building is work in progress. My brother says that what has been done is a drop in the ocean. I argue that it's a drop at least. Mm. At least the ocean has a drop. Mm. So let us be able to ensure that even as we look for what needs to be done, I have a lot of things, Trevor, that I think this government needs to do. I have a lot of things that I feel they can be able to do better. But it will be not relevant of me to therefore say that they have done nothing at all. Okay. Because how do I... That kind of argument only makes me a fashionable activist, and it doesn't move country forward.
Let me bring in some feedback really quick here, and I know you also have another response, Marvin, but now we've run out of time. We keep doing this back and forth, and Bensu is already here, wants to take over the decks. Okelo Mwalimu says, realistically speaking, the government has done very little towards implementation of the 10-point agenda. The war against corruption is muted, and the judiciary slammed the brakes on compensation of victims. NADCO report rested with Baba. These concerns must be fixed ASAP. Okay? Sheila Sweden says the 10-point agenda was a beautiful idea coined by the late Raila Odinga and President Ruto. Unfortunately, the agenda went to the grave with Baba. It's now safer to say that we will never really get the document implemented. Okay? Frank says the 10-point agenda verdict lands on the table, but the grievances that fueled the June 2024 protest, high taxes, cost of living, abductions, and accountability remain largely unresolved. Citizenry must demand for solutions, not declarations and endless rhetorics. Sir Nixon says, and please youths, develop a strong culture of reading and understanding laws, agreements, MOUs, and the like. Challenge the abnormalities lawfully. Overcome that logic we have been used to, that kama baba amesema au kama baba amesoma imetosha. Okay, Boville Roy, if the 10-point agenda was a process, then we need to see progress. 22,000 to start a meaningful business is unrealistic. Compliance charges alone is more than 22,000, unless we want to create 20 million hawkers who run away when they see Kanjo guys. All right, gentlemen and ladies, you have to leave it there. Thank you so much for making time. Bye for now.